Welcome back to Huddle Up. Today we are joined by a very, very special guest. He had one of the best seasons in recent CFL history with the BC Lions. Now he's doing his thing in the NFL recently with the New England Patriots and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Canadian quarterback Nathan Rourke. Nathan, it's an honor. How you doing here today?
Hey man, honor is all mine. I appreciate you having me, Thomas. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great as well. Excited to chat with you today about football and some other stuff. But how's the off season been treating you?
It's been good. I think we were talking before, like the off-season weather this year has been great. I've been in Jacksonville, just came to Toronto at the right time with the weather just getting nice here. So it's been great. Been avoiding the snow, so no complaints.
I mean, Jacksonville sounds beautiful, especially this time of the year. But like you said, you can't really complain about the weather we've had here. Talk to me about, the last year and a half must have just been a whirlwind for you. You have this amazing season with the BC Lions, albeit it was cut short.
Sure.
And then you head over to the NFL and you start with Jacksonville, and then all of a sudden you're playing in New England. And that must be a crazy transition as well, with learning an entire different offense. And not only that, like off the field, you're moving cities, and it's in a country that, it's foreign to Canada. And it's just like, what's that all been like?
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up there. It was definitely a whirlwind. It's tough enough going to different cities, but to learn a new playbook and to learn where everything is in the building and where the meeting room are, and what time of the schedule is and stuff like that. That's all definitely an adjustment. But I'm really fortunate. I think the whole season, I feel like I kind of got a little bit of everything. I was able to learn two different playbooks, two different offenses, meet a lot of different people and see how a lot of different things are done. And I think that's going to set me up for a good experience heading into this new year with a new coach and a new regime in New England. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, you talked about meeting different people and also the coaches thing. Like, there were some stars sort of surrounding you. Obviously in Jacksonville, like Trevor Lawrence is there. That must have been pretty cool to work with him. And then obviously in New England, like Bill Belichick is you can argue he's the greatest coach ever in football. So what was it like to sort of be with those guys and just be like, wow, this is pretty cool?
Yeah, it's pretty surreal for sure. I remember the first day that I went into New England, I saw Coach Belichick in the hallway, and I just went, I didn't believe he was real, But I think first off, talking about Trevor, he's such a down to earth guy. He certainly looks the part in terms of being an NFL quarterback. He's a big dude, and but he's really, really nice. He's super talented. It was a real joy to be able to be in the same room as him, and that room with CJ and him were great. Working with Coach Belichick, that was cool as well. He is just about football. He's got such a great understanding of all three aspects of the game. Like, he's got total control, and to be a part of that last little stretch there with him in New England, I think that's pretty historic. And although it didn't go the way that we wanted it to, it was real cool to be a part of.
Is he sort of as advertised? I know how he is in the media, and I personally love it. I don't know if it's just a shtick and maybe he opens up more, but I love how, like, straight to the point he is with answers and how focused he is on football. I think my favorite story was when they did the COVID draft and he put his dog on the screen. Like, do you have like any stories with him that are just like, yeah, this is how he is? Or
yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a story. During the week, during prep, we would, obviously getting ready for the next opponent, and but on Saturdays, the day where we usually had a little bit some walkthroughs, and it was more of a just getting some things done right before the game, we would have a meeting, just him and the quarterbacks, and he would pull up a bunch of lowlights from practice that week, as well as some lowlights from the game before. So we're moving on. We're preparing for this new team, and we're reminiscing about what we did this prior week. So, and no one was safe. Everyone was getting it in the room, and so it was just an interesting way of going about it and trying to get your confidence up for the game. Probably not the best way, but that was the way he did it, and kind of dreading those Saturday meetings for sure.
I love that, and it's almost like, obviously you're showing your lowlights, but you obviously don't want to crack a smile because it's like it's Bill Belichick who's doing to you. So
you're listening.
Yeah, you're
listening.
definitely dialed in.
Yeah.
That's one guy I definitely would not want to disappoint in any way. It's Bill Belichick. Not only did you, of course, move with some different teams in a different country, but also a different league. And CFL, it's a great game, but it's a different game. Obviously, one less down. There's a couple of different rules. Was there any big transition with that aspect as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the transition really took me the spring when I was in Jacksonville during OTAs. I was really struggling with the fact that everything was a lot closer. So I had worked, from Ohio to BC on really working on my arm strength and getting my mechanics kind of optimized with my throwing coach, Rob Williams, and which had been great, and had this a little bit more extra power than I was used to, and I had obviously been able to do that in the Canadian League. But when I got down back to the American League, I had to kind of adjust. I remember in OTAs thinking to myself, making a mental note, you can't throw anything as fast as you can. You can't really let it rip because, especially on those in-breaking routes, that they're coming in close to you. And so I really had to take something off the ball. And then again, I think that the game prioritizes more anticipation, more accuracy. I think you can get away with it a little bit more. I certainly did with the receiving core that I had in BC. So that was the biggest thing I would say is just the throws are a little bit different. The windows might be a little bit tighter too. More man coverage, so tighter in that way. But definitely just a different game. But I'm glad. I was really fortunate to have this experience in BC. I think that set me up in a positive way for the NFL.
Amazing. Love to pick the brain of an NFL quarterback. You guys, I think it's the most underappreciated thing because, yeah, you guys are athletic and talented, but just how smart you guys are and how you see the game, it's awesome. One thing that I'm sure you figured I'd ask you about, and that's the legendary play in preseason. And obviously here in Canada, we were so proud of you for that. And it was shown on the TSN top 10 or play of the night for so long. Your preseason play against the Cowboys with the Jaguars. Just walk me through that. That was Eli Manning-esque, how you evaded the sack, and that's a Patrick Mahomes ball into the end zone there. So tell me the story behind that play.
I've gotten a lot of comments about that play, but no one's ever said an Eli Manning escape. So that's
it just reminds me of the David Tyree.
No, you're right.
Catch,
you're 100% right, but that's definitely a new one. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of things that went into it. It was an interesting game because we were very good on third down, but we got into a lot of third and long situations. So in that drive, we had converted a bunch of third and longs, and we were in another one in the red zone. Sometimes the preseason's hard for the offensive line because they're playing with people they haven't played with very much. So we had some young guys up there and guys who had a lot of experience in the system, and so the defense knew that we were passing, and so they were able to get through. I was taking a long drop because it was a long developing route. Again, it was a long down and distance. And as I did that, I knew that I had to, kind of buy some time and find a good spot in the pocket. So I kind of looked down and tried to figure out where that was. And as I did so, I saw that, one of our guys up front got beat and there was a guy coming. And usually when you're taught as a quarterback is that when there's a guy coming at you, you don't run away from him because he's going to win that battle all the time. And so I did that, and then I escaped that way. And then I stopped to kind of slammed on the brakes, and I'm not the tallest guy in the world, so I was able to kind of duck under. He went a little bit high, and then was able to actually, the guy who got beat did a really good job of not giving up on the play, and he ended up pushing one of the other guys off me as I was kind of stumbling forward. And as I got my eyes up, I was able to see that we were running like a crow flat concept to the boundary, and the running back had, ran his route to the flat and then saw that I was still alive and, turned it up and wheeled it up into the end zone. I've actually kind of made that throw where I'm kind of falling down a couple of times. I did in BC, did in high school. And, but that time I was actually a little bit higher up. I just had a little bit of a wider base, but there was a guy around me, but I made that throw before and was able to find him. It's actually funny watching the play because one of my buddies, Seth Williams, was wide open, like nobody around him, but I decided to go with a little bit of a tougher throw. So I was glad that it's cool that it worked out.
When you make a play like that and then you come to the sideline, what's the coach say? What's your coordinator say there in your helmet piece?
Yeah, well, when we had scored, the Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, he was going crazy in the headset, which is not very usual. He's pretty unusual. They usually don't, say anything after plays or anything like that. And so he was just screaming in my headset. So I knew something went well. Just my instinct when a big play always happens is I'm looking over to see if there's a flag because I wanted to celebrate and not have anything. But getting off the field, and getting mobbed by my teammates was a really special moment for me because. The spring, like I said, it was a tough spring. I was struggling a little bit and kind of wondering if I would, belonged. And to be able to have that moment and kind of have the validation by the guys that had worked there and kind of proving myself that I kind of belonged, that was really special. And we got the 2-point conversion after that play too, so that made it even better.
Amazing. I think it's interesting the way you said, like, kind of felt like you belonged. And I think in your situation, you're kind of a trailblazer, because a quarterback from Canada going to the NFL, it's not something that we see too often here. And growing up, was that something that was always the goal in mind? Because I mean, I think representation is very important. And if you're growing up here and you don't see other Canadian quarterbacks like yourself, it's sort of hard to feel like, oh yeah, this is realistic for me. And that's why I think, like, now you're so valuable for like younger kids and the next generation. But when you were growing up, what was kind of your story into becoming a quarterback and your sort of aspirations?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I never really considered that there wasn't anybody else. I just, something that I really wanted to do. And luckily I had the support of my family and my parents, that they believed that I could do it. And that was really all that I needed. And so, but, you know, growing up, I came from a family, my mom in particular would only restrict us to about an hour of screen time every day. And I decided that as a young kid, instead of watching cartoons, I wanted to watch my dad's 1996 Green Bay Packers highlight video. And I saw Brett Favre, and I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. I watched that. I didn't watch, like, people would in high school or in elementary school later would talk about SpongeBob. Like, I never watched SpongeBob. I had no idea what was going on. So I would watch that video day after day, and that I wore number 4 for the longest time. And that was, I just set my sights really young, and said that's what I want to do. And when I got to high school, I kind of sat down with my parents and said, like, what are the steps that we need to do to get it? Like, I think it was grade 9. We sat down and we said, like, what are the actual concrete steps that we can give to do that? First thing, easiest path, probably going to Division I. We kind of just went from there. And so again, it was the support from my parents, and kind of, I guess, the ignorance of being a little kid, naivety of just saying, like, you can do whatever you want, and just trying to follow, and, you know, my hero Brett Favre's in his footsteps.
I didn't even know that Brett Favre was the hero growing up. It's fitting. We got the Packers,
we got
the Patriots out, we got the Lions. It all sort of works out, and that's great. And like I said, now I think if you're a young Canadian growing up here and you want to be quarterback, now they have someone like you to look forward, and you've carved out that path now, you know, starting, like you said, D1 and then going to the CFL, doing very, very well. And then, you know, you catch the eye of NFL scouts and NFL teams, and there you are. So that's great. Growing up, was Brett Favre the only quarterback, or were there sort of other quarterbacks that you love to watch and sort of model your game after?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about Brett was that I liked after he'd throw a touchdown pass, like how he'd celebrate, and he'd run down the field, sometimes beating people to the end zone, and sometimes tackle them in the end zone because he was just so excited. And I remember I tried to do that a lot when I was a kid, was just have a lot of fun. And it's, as you grow up and things get a little bit more serious, you forget about the fact that it's just a game. But I always admired the fact that he played like it was a game, like you're just in the backyard. So that's the thing I took from him. Obviously, you grow up and you realize the interceptions might be something you want to, maybe not keep in your game. But yeah, I mean, again, I appreciate the game. I really revere it, and there's a lot of players that are great players that I just try to take little bits and pieces, right? Like, I think players like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are easy people to say, but I really feel like that, if you study them as quarterbacks, you kind of take big bits and pieces. People like Drew Brees, Russell Wilson with the being able to escape, and the Aaron Rodgers. You just watch them and you just try to take little bits and pieces from what their game is, whether it's their leadership, whether it's their pre-snap ability, whether it's their arm strength, the way that they're throwing it, the rotational aspect of it. Like, those are all bits and things that you take. And I think now I just watch film, and when I watch quarterbacks, whoever it is, whether it's preseason, quarterback, backup, starter, whatever it is, you just try to take the little things, try to add it to your game.
Let's talk a little bit about the sport of football in Canada, because it feels like, especially here, like touch football, flag football it's kind of booming now, and it's getting more popular, and it's great for leagues like the CFL as well.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see the future of the sport kind of going? Because it's not just you that's playing in the NFL. There's so many guys now, like Javon Holland,
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin St-Juste, Chase Claypool. The list really goes on with the amount of Canadians that every single year we feel like they're entering into the draft and they're doing great things.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm always rooting for those guys. No matter what team they're on, I'm hoping that they do well. I was talking to a teacher yesterday at St. Francis Xavier in Milton, and we were talking about just this, what the next step for the game is. And one of the things that I've been really impressed with, specifically in the United States, is the involvement of girls in flag football. I think that's a huge step for the game. I think that obviously with safety concerns, going out there with tackle, and really starting them young. Like when I started at age 7 and my brother started at age 5 in tackle football, and that was probably a little early, but now that we're seeing that flag football can really get people involved and grow. And the teacher yesterday was telling me about some people who had just settled in Canada. They're coming from another country, and they just really want to get and learn the game. And I think that's all just positive things. And I think flag football is something that can be accessible to everyone. I think it certainly gives you a lot of fundamentals that you can need for the tackle game, and can translate for people who want to play in the next level as well, whether it's high school or it's collegiate, in the U.S. or in Canada. And so those are all things I think are really positive, and I think they check a lot of boxes in terms of safety and as well as developmental and of the fundamentals as well. So those are all things that I think are really positive for the game.
Yeah, it seems like there's so many different avenues now where there's different entry points for people to learn the sport, love the sport, and even just watching on TV is another thing with so many star players to model after. Earlier with one of my questions, you mentioned the great receiving core that you had in BC. I'm wondering, just with your Lions teammates in general, I think it was when you did that play in preseason, they actually showed it on the Jumbotron there at the Lions game. Do you still keep in contact with a lot of those guys?
Yeah, I've been keeping in touch with them over free agency, and hoping that they do well. I know that right now it seems like that group's kind of been split up, and that's just the way it goes in pro football, is that you're not able to keep everyone, but just makes those years and last year with the same core all that more special. It was really, I mean, as a quarterback, it's your dream, right? It's be able to go to anybody out of the 5, to just be able to for defenses not to be able to key on one person. I think that's so valuable. Those guys were so selfless. I think that's the big thing, is that I think the stereotype is that receivers all want to get the ball, and that's true. And you want the guys to want the ball, but when they want to they want to run their route so that their guys get open and that they get their touches. And you're coming off the field and maybe it didn't go the way you wanted to, but no one's screaming at each other. Like, those are all positive things and really valuable things. And especially as a young quarterback, to see those guys rally around me was meant the world to me. I love those guys. I'm wishing them nothing but the best, whether it's in BC or other places.
We always end the show with a segment called 3 Downs, but we're going to move it to 4 Downs today, now that you're playing in the NFL. You talked about Brett Favre earlier.
Yeah.
But with this whole Patrick Mahomes thing and him back in another Super Bowl, the GOAT debate is all sort of anyone wants to talk about in the NFL. Your 4 greatest quarterbacks of all time.
So my Mount Rushmore.
Your Mount Rushmore of NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah. So I would say Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. I say probably Mahomes and Montana. I think, to me, like someone on Twitter I've seen that they don't say that, they don't consider quarterback wins to be a stat. Yeah. But I do think that it's valuable. It may not be like the biggest thing, but I think it's pretty valuable. In terms of, I think those are the greatest, but I think that Rodgers is close up there. I think Marino's up there, and they're just unbelievable talents and be able to throwers of the football. And I certain in terms of the GOAT debate, I still think that's Tom until Mahomes gets there. I think their core, the people that they have around them, is comparable. In terms of Brady had Gronk and Mahomes has Kelsey, and so I think that is comparable, and great head coaches as well. We'll see what it is when it's all said and done. But I will say I really appreciate the way that Mahomes has handled all those questions. He's done a really good job of just focusing on the now, and I think that's what he's got to do.
I think that's a great Mount Rushmore. Not doesn't leave much room for argument, and I like how you gave some love to Marino and Rodgers, guys who I think you talked about the value of winning. Mm-hmm. If Marino had just won Super Bowl, I think he probably gets there because of how he was just so talented and changed the game, and obviously Aaron Rodgers is just like incredible, right?
Yeah,
so
I've got a lot of love for a lot of people. Here's one that you might not. I really have a lot of love for Tony Romo. He's a guy
very underrated one, yeah.
He's a guy that when it was tough during the year when I was itching to play in practice squad, he's a guy that I've studied and that I really would love to be able to follow in his footsteps. He had an amazing career, and we have very similar paths. Undrafted guys, had to climb our way up the roster, and and I just love the way he played. He played. He was such a great improviser. Not the fastest or the strongest, but he figured out a way, and that's kind of where I come from as well.
And you talked about loving how Brett Favre loved the game. I don't know if anyone loves the game more than Tony Romo. That's evident in the way that he's a color commentator now. He's just like every play is so excited.
Yeah.
Great answers, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you the best of luck going forward. It was a privilege to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Appreciate it.